Marcus Jones stood at the edge of his front lawn, facing an enraged neighbor. The man's face was bright red, veins pulsing with anger. His finger pointed accusingly at Marcus. "I'm calling the cops on you," he shouted. "You don't belong here." Heart-pounding, Marcus remained calm. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he started, but his words were interrupted by the blaring of sirens approaching fast. As a police cruiser pulled up, Marcus straightened, bracing himself. This was just the beginning. The day Marcus pulled into his new driveway on Oak Lane, he was filled with excitement. The moving boxes stacked high in his sedan were symbols of a hard-earned victory, his first home. But as he stepped out into the autumn chill, the weight of reality settled in. He knew, just by looking around, that he was one of the few black residents in this predominantly white neighborhood. As he unloaded his belongings, a movement in a nearby window caught his eye. Someone had been watching. The curtains quickly snapped shut, and Marcus couldn't help but feel the sharp sting of being scrutinized. Undeterred, he pushed forward, wanting nothing more than to settle in and start fresh. Then, across the street, an older woman stepped out. He waved, and after a slight hesitation, she returned the gesture. Small wins, but still, a sense of discomfort lingered in the air. As the sun began to set, Marcus had brought in the last of the boxes. He stood on his porch, looking at the quiet street around him, proud of his accomplishments. Tomorrow, the furniture truck would arrive, and his new life would truly begin. What he didn't know was that his arrival had already stirred the neighborhood. Inside his home next door, Tom Wilson paced. His eyes, full of concern, never left the house across the street. There was something unsettling about the man carrying boxes into the house. Tom's comfort was being replaced by suspicion. He had to do something. He grabbed his phone, dialing 911 in a panic. "There's a suspicious man at my neighbor's house," Tom blurted. "I think he's breaking in. He's been carrying boxes all afternoon." The operator's voice was calm but firm. "Can you describe this person, sir? What makes you think he's suspicious?" Tom's mind raced. He's not from around here. He doesn't look like he belongs in this neighborhood." The operator pressed for more details. "What exactly has he done that seems suspicious? Has he committed any crime?" Tom faltered. "Well, no, but he's out of place. You don't understand. This is a quiet neighborhood. We don't get people like him moving in." The operator's voice softened with restraint. "Sir, moving into a new home isn't a crime. Unless you have evidence of a break-in or suspicious behavior, we can't just send someone based on assumptions." After a few moments, Tom relented. "Please, just send someone to check, for the safety of the community." As the police cruiser pulled up outside Marcus's house, a sense of dread washed over him. The lights flashed, and Marcus put down the box in his hands, exhaling deeply. The tension was palpable. He stepped out onto his porch, knowing what was about to unfold. Two officers approached, their faces a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "Good evening, sir," the taller officer said, his hand resting on his belt. "We received a call about suspicious activity. Mind if we ask a few questions?" Marcus stood tall, his voice calm and steady. "Of course, officers. How can I help you?" "What exactly are you doing here?" the shorter officer asked, eyeing him warily. Marcus took a breath. "I live here. I just moved in today." Before the officers could respond, a commotion erupted from next door. Tom Wilson stormed out, his face flushed with indignation. "That's him! Officers, that man doesn't belong here!" The frustration bubbled inside Marcus, but he kept his voice steady. "Sir, I understand your concern, but I assure you, I live here. I'm your new neighbor." Tom scoffed. "Prove it." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. With deliberate calm, Marcus pulled out his wallet, offering his ID. "I'd be happy to," he said, handing it over. The taller officer looked at the ID, his eyes widening in disbelief. You're Chief Jones?" he stammered. Marcus smiled faintly. "That's right. I'm the new police chief for this district. I start officially next week, but I wanted to get settled first. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. The officers straightened, their postures shifting with new respect. Tom's face drained of color. "I'm so sorry, Chief," the shorter officer mumbled, embarrassment creeping into his voice. Marcus raised a hand, his expression softening. "It's okay, officers. You were just doing your job, but I hope this serves as a reminder about the dangers of assumptions." The crowd of neighbors who had gathered to watch the scene unfold stood frozen. Some were embarrassed, others curious. Marcus knew this moment could change everything. He stepped forward, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I understand this isn't the introduction any of us expected," Marcus said, his voice steady and measured. "But let me tell you a bit about my experiences, about the everyday vigilance required when people look at you and see something different, something that makes them question your right to be here." A shift happened in the crowd as Marcus spoke. A quiet realization spread across their faces. What had been an uncomfortable moment was beginning to transform into an opportunity for growth. He looked directly at Tom. "Mr. Wilson," he said, extending his hand, "I want you to be part of the solution. Your perspective is valuable. We can create a safer, more inclusive neighborhood, but it starts with dialogue." Tom hesitated. His eyes flickered between Marcus's outstretched hand and the faces of the neighbors, their eyes filled with expectation. After a long pause, Tom stepped forward, grasping Marcus's hand. The handshake was brief, but powerful, a step toward something bigger. Over the coming weeks, Oak Lane began to change. Conversations that had never happened before were now in full swing. The police department reevaluated its approach to community policing, and some officers embraced the need for change while others struggled. The neighborhood, once quiet and resistant, now buzzed with new energy. Tom, still grappling with his own biases, joined a community advisory board, though their conversations were often tense. But through these moments, Marcus saw growth, the kind that would take time but was, undeniably, happening. As Marcus sat on his porch one evening, watching the streetlights flicker to life, a sense of cautious optimism washed over him. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but he was ready. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was worth it. Every day he would work toward building a community where everyone felt safe, heard, and valued. And that was only the beginning.